right, this is Bob Coppin, CEO, Simplex-IT, Crotchio Geek, with another episode of BizTech Twists. And I am joined once. This is actually the second time you've been on this.
I think so.
Brad Gross. And Brad, explain why the world cares so strongly about your existence on this planet.
The whole world? I'll start with my little area, 20 by 20 around me. Why do people care? Well, I have been working with MSPs for 22 years. I have counseled thousands of MSPs. I wrote a book on it, just sporadically placed around my office. And I know what I'm talking about when it comes to MSP transactions of all kinds. So that's why I think people care about what I say. But really, ultimately, the only thing I care about is how you think of me, Bob. That's what it comes down to.
I know, and I appreciate that. And I am working on a response to that protection order.
Okay.
But one thing I want to say is, first of all, when we talk about MSPs, the managed service provider, it's the industry Simplex-IT is in, so on and so forth. And the reason Brad is selling himself a little bit short, he is recognized as pretty much the expert, and it's not just an expert, but the willing to talk about it expert regarding the legal world of managed service providers and the legal world of organizations and how they consume IT services, which at the end of the day is what managed services do. And Brad and I always have really interesting conversations whenever we run into each other at conferences and the like. And one of the ones we started with back in Nashville, and we just have already talked about it for about 10 minutes before we started recording this thing.
In the green room.
From the green room.
In the green room, yeah.
But it was the question of what is an MSP? What is a managed service provider? And to put a little bit of context to this, and then let's jump into it, or add your own context, or you can drop off the call, Brad. I got nothing to hold you back.
I'm just going to leave.
Really?
I'll be back in like 4 minutes.
My dating days are back.
Yeah, it's
but it was one of those where you will have so many people, especially when we're talking about responsibilities for cybersecurity, responsibilities for maintaining uptimes, responsibilities for whatever. You will have so many people who are talking about what is a managed service provider, and they can talk about that from a conceptual standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from an insurance standpoint. And it's one of those where everybody has a definition. And but they never seem to gel. And it's not like we can say, oh, you're licensed to practice law, which I think you are. Oh, sorry. I will cut this part out.
Okay.
No, but it's one of those where there is no formal introduction or formal licensing from how do we provide IT services?
Right. Well, I'll tell you this. So first of all, you said it goes back to a conversation we had in Nashville. I think it goes back even further than that, to a conversation that we had in Chicago when we were in a room filled with cybersecurity experts. I mean, truly experts, right? Right. You know what I'm talking about. And it was not just, I was there as the legal end of things, and you were there as, I don't know why you were there, but you were there too.
This guy in the back.
Yeah, you were there. Okay. And we had about 13, 14 people who really were highly regarded in the industry, experts in this area. And the question arose not only what is an MSP, but an MSSP. And it took hours of debate. Amazingly, these are all these highly educated, experienced people. No one could come up with a definition of what is an MSP and what is an MSSP. And I think to this day, we still haven't come up with a definition. It's still floating around. So the definition that has eluded the industry has eluded the experts in the industry as well. And that's a problem on several levels, I think. The first level, of course, is from a consumer's perspective, a company's perspective. They don't know who they should be hiring. Like, what's an MSP? They don't understand the industry at all because the industry really hasn't defined itself.
Right.
I think that, so from a consumer perspective, that's a problem. From an industry perspective, I think that what you're finding is a lot of people are just calling themselves MSPs and MSSPs, and they have no basis to do so. They don't have the experience. They don't have the background. They don't even have the motivation.
But that's illegal, right, for them to do that? I
What are
can't.
you, a cop? What are you talking about? It's illegal. I mean, no, they can do whatever they want, right?
Right.
Anybody who understands computers can hang a shingle and say, I'm an MSP, right? Well,
Okay,
do
and
you
I'm an
understand?
MSP, so I don't understand computers anymore. So that really is my
It's
point.
over. You're
It
still
truly
working on
is.
things like
Anyone,
behind me.
yeah,
Hmm.
anyone can call themselves an MSP.
Yes.
Any company offering heck, it could be totally non-computer related. Would be
Right. And so that's the issue. I mean, if you Google, if you look up the definition of an MSP, it will always basically give you the same thing, which is a technology company that is partnering with or used to complement uh, services for another company that does not have the money or the expertise to handle all of the IT infrastructure itself. Okay, but that doesn't really tell us anything because, like you said, that could be a one-man show, that could be a 50-man shop, it could just be someone who understands computers and comes in and installs antivirus. Is he an MSP? Well, I guess so, right? Because the company brought him in, they have the money, they don't have the expertise, and now this guy's an MSP. So it's a problem. And I see it from my perspective because there are far too many uh, people who are calling themselves MSPs that, while they're technically savvy, they are technically savvy, um, they don't really know about or adhere to any standards. They don't think about insurance. They don't know how to run their newly formed company as a business. Um, so they don't know, they don't even know how to explain properly to their customers what they're going to do for them. So there's a lot of mismanaged expectation. So it's an issue. What are your thoughts, Bob?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. What?
Well, so that's it for today. I appreciate everyone joining us.
Well, I think, but you could also almost make the case that the opposite can be equally true, where the client is asking for such minimal service because they only think that this one thing has to be done and they're going to be safe.
Yeah.
I bought antivirus 4 years ago. I'm good, right? From a security standpoint, or I'm too small, or I'm whatever. And if we'll say MSP, and when we say MSP, this can be a one person shop, like you're saying. It can
It
be
can be.
a fully blown, you know, does everything soup to nuts, 24/7, or all
Yeah.
points in between. It is basically some kind of contractual agreement between two entities that may or may not include the letters MS and P together.
Mhm.
But you could have a client who is so demanding that they want minimal service that MSP, who is also desperately trying to make money and to put food on their table, and there could be healthy doses of ignorance going across the board. Uh, they will sell a poorly formed solution,
That's right. That's right.
and
Well, that goes to what I was saying earlier about how the MSPs don't even have standards that they'll stick to. Like, for example, if I have, if a client comes in my door and just, wants to retain my services, but absolutely won't listen to me, right? Absolutely won't let me do the work I need to do to help this person, candidly, I'm not going to work with that client. That client is never going to be a client of mine. Okay. And that's not to say that every client has to agree with everything that I say and tell them to do. But if they just
I can
simply,
attest to that being
yes,
the case.
exactly, exactly. But the point is that we have standards, whether it's because of experience or legal training or just business training. This firm has standards, and like you just pointed out, an MSP will go in, the client doesn't understand what it needs, the MSP doesn't understand that it should stick to standards, so it implements a less than adequate solution. Bad things happen, and then there's friction and litigation. Who's to blame? Is it the client that didn't understand what it wants? Is it the MSP that didn't understand the standards? I don't know. That's why lawyers make money, and it's a problem.
That lawyers make money. I thought you'd be in favor of that.
Certainly is. Well, just some lawyers should make money, not all lawyers.
So, and here's part of the challenge, though, is that we could be talking completely about education on, again, both sides of the fence,
Mm-hmm.
of understanding what the risks and opportunities are here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those where in some cases you could have where an MSP is taking advantage of the client
Right.
by selling them the bag of goods, the inappropriate, and they know it and all that, but we got the money out of them, so we'll move on. And hey, as long as nothing goes bad, we're all good.
Until some
So here's
said that you were just talking about how we're going to install something, a solution, and it's not the greatest solution, but as long as nothing goes wrong, we're good.
right. So if you have an internet connection, for
Yeah.
example, as long as the interconnection's okay.
Perfect. Good example. Right.
No, but it's one of those where whether or not it is the part of the cheapness of either party, it is the part of deniability. It could be that you don't have necessarily bad actors.
Yeah.
You could just have uninformed actors.
I agree. And uninformed actors is one of the main reasons why MSPs get into trouble. It is why they sometimes have a bad reputation. And that, I think, if we're going to, that's not going to change anytime soon. Meaning,
Right.
there's no, you always hear, oh, there's going to be legislation that regulates MSPs, and there's already some. Okay, no, there isn't for the most part, and it ain't coming anytime soon.
Right.
The regulation that we hear about is largely limited. In fact, it is limited to MSPs that deal with the government or that deal with the federal government or state government. And it has to do with, well, if you get breached, you have to report it. Look at Louisiana law. People could Google it. That is the quote regulation. But 99.9% of the MSPs out there don't deal with governments. So that regulation doesn't apply to them. Mm-hmm. So regulation is not coming anytime soon. Standards aren't coming anytime soon. So what to do? I think that what MSPs would be wise to do is start with a certain foundation, okay? A foundation. For example, an MSP is a company. Now, you'd say, well, right, I get it. They're a company. You understand that, I think. A lot of MSPs don't. They don't realize that once you incorporate or, start a limited liability, you're a company. You have to run that like a company. You need to have an operating agreement or a shareholders agreement. You need to have a bank account. You need to have insurance. You need to run your company like a business. Okay. No one is going to run their business, at least not these days, on a handshake, which means that once you organize your company and get insured, you need agreements, because a handshake deal is not going to help you when, notice I didn't say if, I said when something goes wrong, because it will go wrong. It always goes wrong. If MSPs just took those initial steps, they would be far along into avoiding some of the problems that they're seeing now. Okay. From there, I think that they have to think about standards. When are we going to take a client? When are we not going to accept a client? Okay. Are we going to take everything that walks in the door? Well, if you take everything that walks in the door, you're going to have a problem, because one of those people, one of those clients will be litigious. They'll be a pain in the butt. They're going to cause you more problems than the money that you made on them. You have to have standards. You have to have solutions below which you will not drop. Now we're about 75% of the way there. Do you disagree with anything I'm saying so far?
So the only thing I would say is that don't think of it in terms of there are going to be problems because of agreements or the like. It's also a profitability. The only reason, MSPs make money generally by scaling, by doing the same thing often enough with enough different companies so they can do it cheaper and more effectively than their competition.
Okay.
Including whether there's internal IT or the like. So you can have a company that you think you're successful with because they're happy with the agreement, or at least they're paying their bills, they're complaining, but you're selling $20 bills for $19.95. You're losing money in the deal.
So you're saying they have to always make sure that they're profitable, right, in some way, shape, which I think you're 100% right. That sort of goes to running a business like a business, right? You got to run it like a business. You can't give away the product. You can't overpromise and underdeliver. You can't do those kinds of things, because you're right. Then you start chasing your own tail, right?
And I think
Mhm.
one of the things that happens, especially with the smaller MSPs,
Yeah,
is they lose sight of the fact because they're like, no, we're cash poor. We got to bring the cash in. We got to bring the cash in. That's true. But if that causes the cash or the productivity to go out the window at a greater speed than the cash is
yeah,
coming in, yeah, you're making your present tense person happy, but your future tense person is going to hate you.
agreed, agreed. So I think that we've now solved 75%. I think the other 25% probably relates to marketing of some sort. Marketing. I speak to conservatively 4 to 6 new MSPs every week. Conservatively, sometimes it's as many as 10 to 12. And the number of MSPs that tell me when I ask them, well, how do you do your marketing? How do people learn about you? Oh, word of mouth. I don't understand it. Word of mouth. Word of mouth is so 2000, right? It's so 1998. I think that MSPs, in order to ensure consistent revenue, need to have some consistency in growth. Some doesn't mean you have to grow 20, 30% a year, but just grow, continue to grow, because if you're growing, you won't have to make uh, you won't have to engage in things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. In other words, if you're growing your company, you don't have to take every client that walks in the door.
Right.
If you're growing your company, you don't have to undercut prices to the extent that now you're not making any money because you feel good. You're growing, right? You can reject a client, you can reject a customer. Um, so marketing is a big issue. And I think that MSPs are missing the boat there. They're doing word of mouth stuff where they throw up a website and they think now I'm up there. No, it's more than that. Thoughts?
I would agree with that. I would also say that the messaging that most MSPs do for marketing is horrible. I think that the messaging that most MSPs do is all about them
Yeah.
and how wonderful they are.
Okay. I
And,
I agree 100%. And I'm
and
going to add to it, but go on.
go for it.
Well, so I think that MSPs do talk about themselves too much and not about their customers. So their customers don't relate. The customers have certain needs and fears. And when an MSP just sits there and talks about itself, you're not addressing the needs and fears. So that customer will probably go find someone who will address those needs.
Right.
So that's huge. The other part, and I was thinking about doing a podcast on this, but now I'm doing it on your podcast. So who the hell wants to do it twice?
Oh,
Um,
oh
is
yeah.
this, I think that MSPs would be well advised to specialize. Now, what do I mean by specialize? Well, the example I'm going to give you is when I was growing up, my dad, well, is a retired dentist, but back then he was a dentist. And when you're a kid, you say, "Oh, maybe I want to do what you do, Dad." And I remember not much from my childhood, but one thing I do remember for reasons I won't get into. I remember having a conversation when I was a kid, saying, "Oh, maybe I'll be a dentist." And my father said to me, he said, "You don't want to be a dentist." He said, "You want to be an endodontist or an orthodontist," which I had no idea what that meant. But his point was, you want to specialize because the days of general services in dentistry are numbered. People go to specialists. Specialists always make money, they are always in demand. The general dentist is not necessarily always in demand. And I thought about that. In fact, I've even incorporated it. I mean, look what I do, right? I'm not a general lawyer. I'm a specialist in a certain area. And I think that MSPs, while they are certainly while they have to focus on what their customers' needs and desires are, I also think that they should start to specialize in areas, right? I'm not just an MSP. I'm an MSP for manufacturers. And here's why I say that.
Mhm.
And then focus on the needs of manufacturers, right? Or I'm an MSP for medical offices. Why? Well, I understand what a medical office does, how it works, its unique, right, requirements. That's what I do. I think that specialization is probably something that MSPs would be well advised to think about. Agree? Disagree? I mean,
Yes.
if you disagree, you're wrong, but I'm interested anyway.
No, it's one of those where I would agree with that. I don't think that necessarily the it has to be in, because people often think about that as it has to be a vertical.
Right.
It has to be this particular industry or the like. And I
Mhm.
don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that said, I think that you need to be able to say, this is the environment where we're going to be best at. And it has to be well defined. My dad was an insurance salesman, and he taught me two things. One is there's no way in God's green earth I ever want to sell insurance. No, not going to
Mhm.
happen. But the other thing is he said, make it clear to when you talk to potential clients early on, under what circumstances you would be a bad fit. Make
Mm.
sure that people understand why this will work, this relationship will work, and why this won't work.
Mm.
Because what we don't want to do is again, we don't want to sign people up that are bad fits. You're going to end up with the trouble. You're going to end up with a lack of profitability, so on and so forth. Uh, and you're also going to be wasting time discovering that
Yeah.
if you wait until after, two assessments and three calls and two proposals.
Right. But I think that what an MSP, and I think that is great advice. The whole thing about telling a customer where there would be a bad fit, MSPs are scared to do that.
Yeah.
Because they then think that the client will walk out the door. And I think the message that you and I are conveying here is let them walk.
Absolutely.
Let them walk out the door. Don't take something that's a bad fit. Don't
Yeah.
take something where they don't appreciate your value or what you do. Let them walk out the door.
And also to kind of circle back to the original topic, that they understand what that version of MSP is that you're presenting. Don't try to pretend like you're the same MSP as everybody else is. We are not, if you're one of the things we do, if you're looking for best price, we're not it. We're not going to be it. There's no way around it. So if cost is your absolute driving factor, bless you. We're done. No problem. You don't say that in a way that's condescending or you're passing judgment on them, the cheapskates, but you're being specific along those lines. That frees me up to talk to the people who are going to have the value, so on and so forth.
Sure.
If you're not willing to spend time and engage with us
Mm-hmm.
on your IT and business strategies and how to integrate them, we're going to be a bad fit, because that's where a lot of our value comes from, is from those conversations and that level of integration.
Yep. So what I'm doing, reason why I'm looking down here, is I'm drawing something.
Oh, that's nice.
I'm drawing, yeah, it's very pretty. It's very
Yeah,
nice. Actually, you're going to say, what the hell is that? But hang on.
It's already out on coming out.
Think of a brontosaurus. And I'm sure, by the way, on none of your podcasts has anyone said the word brontosaurus.
No, that is the first. That is the first.
Because I'm willing to go there. Like you said,
have the
I'm willing to go there.
from the ceiling, with brontosaurus, and it's.
I'm willing to go there.
Okay.
If you think, and by the way, not only going to think of a brontosaurus, trust me, this is going to work. We're coming around to what my point is. I want you to think of the end of a brontosaurus, not the front. The end of it. Okay?
The tail.
The tail. And that's what my point is. Here's my drawing. And I don't even know if it's going to come out. Here, wait, let me see. Okay.
Yeah, that's coming out.
Now, here's my brontosaurus, okay?
Okay.
I want you to think of the brontosaurus tail as business. Okay, as business.
Okay.
This business, this is what you want. Okay. Right. This business is not what you want. This business here is the type of business that you take on where you're doing it just because it's easy. Like you just said, we'll install antivirus, and as long as nothing goes wrong, great. And right, it's quick, it's easy. This causes you the most problems right here. Okay. And like you just said, if a customer sits down and they're only interested in money, that's all they're interested in, they fall here. Okay. And you should get rid of it. Everything from this tail, like where it starts to go down, I'm doing this backwards, so it's not easy for me to do it. Okay. Everything where it goes down, get rid of this. This stuff is gone. This is the business you want. And I think that's a brontosaurus tail. And I think that MSPs need to really consider that when they're talking to a customer. Are they on the on the sloping end of the animal, or are they at that very bottom part where they're just interested in a quick solution? They don't want details; they just want a quick solution, or they just want it cheap. I don't care what it is, as long as it's cheap. That's tail. Okay, that's tail. Cut off the tail.
Are you fed up with reactive IT providers who take too long to respond, let problems fester, and nickel and dime you for every little thing? Say goodbye to those frustrations by choosing Simplex-IT, home of Amazon's best-selling author and BizTech Twist host Bob Coppage. As Northeast Ohio's friendly neighborhood MSP, Simplex-IT has been providing top-notch managed and co-managed IT services since 2007, supporting hundreds of clients locally and across the United States. With a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, you'll benefit from proactive maintenance, 24/7 monitoring, and streamlined technology that will help you grow your business. Visit simplex-it.com for more information and to start experiencing stress-free IT today.
I would agree with that. And I think one of the things that is needed then.
Oh, by the way, don't steal my picture, by the way. I'm going to copyright this. I'm just saying before you comment.
Well, no, but
This is an original artwork.
I can think of how to add the front of the brontosaurus onto it as well.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Because you could have.
I'm going to pick up my pen. Yeah.
So you have the middle part, which is where we get the value. They're willing to pay for the services. There's profitability, all that kind of fun stuff. Then you could have the front of the brontosaurus, which would include those companies who are paying a good amount of money, but they are consuming so much of your time that they end up being equally thin.
Right.
The tail.
Right. They end up in the tail. Even agreed.
Right. So I've improved.
I'm sending this to you, by the way.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes. Go on. Yes. No, but I agree with you that just because they're paying a lot of money doesn't necessarily put them in the top part of this.
Right.
You're right, because they still could have deficiencies in the relationship that cause it to down here. And this, by the way, this is where you get your litigation. Seriously, this is where your litigation is. This is your mismanaged expectation. This is the customer that doesn't understand why it's 11:45 right now. Why can't you give me my stuff by 12 o'clock? I want all my stuff back. They don't understand or respect the value of what you do. So, yeah, I agree.
And part of the challenge is, and this gets back to some of the original topic, is that because you have so many other people who are saying we're also an MSP, but they're not defining, or they're defining it in very, very cloud-like ways, that since the client is not consuming their messaging, they're consuming yours.
Right.
And all they hear is, well, you're an MSP and they're an MSP. They're promising the moon and they're 25% of your cost. You have to go that step beyond and define what your vision, what your version of the MSP is, regardless of what the industry version is, because the industry version is not there to help you. It doesn't exist.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So we're in agreement. So what did we learn? We've learned that MSP is not a defined term. We never even talked about MSSP. I
don't even think we actually specified what MSSP means. What the second S means.
I guess, it's funny because if we're going to start talking about managed security service providers, I still think that that's such a amorphous term. I mean, we can talk about that. We can, you tell me.
It essentially is, you're taking the amorphous term of MSP and adding more.
Right. Right. You're just adding more onto it.
Right. Yeah,
of course.
More or more on. A little of both.
No, I agree with you.
And this is kind of interesting because in theory, an MSSP is an MSP who is much more focused or dedicated to security. And equally driven by no requirement whatsoever in terms of defining themselves as an MSSP. There are even companies who are posting ads that they will turn your MSP into an MSSP in one day.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely, it's true.
I haven't seen that.
It's
yeah, and once they start focusing, they're calling themselves a security-focused MSP and so forth. Now you're going to get into compliance and regulation and so forth, and yet there's like you just said, there are companies out there that are just advertising that they'll make you into an MSSP. Yeah, I think that it's a problem. I don't know what the solution is. Do you have a solution? I'm not sure what the solution is yet.
Well, I think the solution has to be generated by the individual MSP. You have to protect yourself, like you said. So you basically talked about it from an inward facing standpoint. You come up with some standards. You come up with minimal types of clients that you're going to bring on board. You protect yourself from being a victim of over commoditization.
Right.
Okay. So I think that from that standpoint, it's good. From my standpoint, it is don't look for the industry to define who you are. You have to define who you are and how you define MSP to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to define what that value is that you're delivering. And that's a challenge. Simplex-IT, that's a challenge. One of the things we focus on is we simplify the complex. So we do a lot of education.
Yeah.
We're also very focused on, and we're focusing on the topic of resilient IT that can support both security risks as well as the productivity opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really doubling down on how we communicate those things because we want to define our vision of what an MSP is. And every other quality MSP is doing, I think, some form of the same thing. Whether they're conscious of it or not, I don't know. Because the industry is not going to define it for you.
It's not defining it for us. The industry is not going to define it for us. I know there have been attempts and there were working groups and so forth. I get it. And, we're all in fear of regulation. That's not coming anytime soon.
No.
So I agree. It's up to the MSP to do the right thing and figure out what it is and in a clearly defined way, because otherwise you end up taking on tail work that you're not going to want. It's not going to work out. And then you end up on the Reddits of the industry saying, help me. I can't find clients. I have no marketing. What am I supposed to do? And the answer is, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to go into a different business.
Yeah.
Really, that's what you're supposed to do.
And it's actually interesting you say that, because I think that, and this is true for every industry, but there are a lot of people who really shouldn't be where they're at.
Right.
And yet it's one of those where Annie Dukes wrote a great book called Quit. That was talking about, sometimes the smart thing is to quit, to basically say, this is not for me, situationally, circumstantially.
Yeah.
And yet you always have so many people who are like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I hate doing this. This is horrible. I'm about to lose my house. My life is, in ruins. My wife's leaving me. My husband's leaving me, whatever. And everybody's like, hang in there.
I agree with you. It's interesting because every now and then I'll watch, I'm not endorsing it, but Shark Tank, right? Everyone knows Shark Tank. And Mr. Wonderful, right? That dude, that guy. But every now and then, he'll have like a great bit of advice, whether you agree with him generally or not. Okay. They'll be talking to this up and coming prospective business, all right, that's seeking money. And they'll say, how long have you been doing this? 4 years. Okay. And are you making money? No. Well, are you in debt? Yes. By how much? $1 million. Right. And he'll look at them and say, it's been 4 years. You're in debt of $1 million. Maybe this isn't a business that's viable. Right. And then, oh no, but I believe in it. Right. The person says, I believe in it. And if I just had more money, and he sits back and goes, yeah, it's been 4 years. You haven't made $1. Right. Yeah. It's not a viable business. And I think that in truth, that applies to some of the people in the MSP industry.
In any industry.
In any industry. Right.
But I would say absolutely in the MSP. And that's not an attack.
Right.
It's not saying you're not worthwhile as a person or as an individual. It's not saying that you're a complete failure or anything along those lines. It may be that your dedication to this is preventing you from finding your success somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Agreed. And I think that, if more MSPs thought about that at the outset, there would be far fewer people saying, I'm not making any money. I can't find clients. I don't know how to do marketing. They could be doing other things that are productive and within their core practice, whatever it is.
Well,
for sure.
So 3 things of advice that you give someone who's basically trying to figure out what is an MSP from an MSP standpoint. Let's actually do 2 things. 3 pieces of advice that you give to an MSP as far as how they would define themselves, and 3 pieces of advice you give to a CEO of a company who thinks they need to hire an MSP.
Okay. So, three bits of advice I would give to an MSP. One, structure. Have the structure in place. Understand that you're a business. You shouldn't be operating as a just an average individual, because if you screw something up, there's going to be personal liability. So you need structure. That's the first bit of advice. Second bit of advice is to um, consider the adage that we're all friends until we're not. Okay. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you need to have agreements in place. Why? Well, because we're all friends until we're not. And you might have a customer that you've known for 20 years and you've been doing work with them. Nothing will bet. Hey, it's my customer, right? I've known him 20 years until something goes wrong. Then we're not friends anymore. Okay. So you need structure, you need agreements. And then the third thing I think is something that you hit on, which is define what you are and define what you're not. Okay. In fact, sometimes it's as important to define what you're not
Yeah.
as what you are. And that was your point earlier. That was a good point that um, if you know what you're not willing to do, if you have those standards that you're not willing to drop below, you will seek out and accept and end up having relationships with better customers,
Yep.
right? A better relationship, a better business situation. So that's my bit of advice to MSPs. Now, what was your other thing?
For a company that may want to hire an MSP, what's your three pieces of advice in terms of what is an MSP?
Wow. So if I were a company and I was looking for an MSP, what I would first look to is to make sure that the company understood my business. Okay, understood my business. That doesn't mean that the MSP has to know every facet of what I do and how I do it, but I want to know that the MSP that I'm going to bring in understands some of the nuances and is willing to adapt and learn. Any MSP that comes in and says, "This is how we do things," and I'm telling you, this is what you need. I'm not. I have one service plan. That's all I have, and this is what you're going to get. Is probably not the MSP that as a company I would want to work with. I want to know that that MSP is willing to understand my business and learn and can convey to me some of the solutions that help my needs. That's one. Two, as a company, I'm going to reverse, just look at it from a rather a different angle of what I told MSPs. I want to see an agreement. I want to see an agreement. An MSP that comes to me and says, "We don't need an agreement. Look, we're going to do this. We'll invoice you and it'll just be a monthly thing." No, 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 no. They say high fences make good neighbors. Works both ways. The MSP needs to protect itself. The company needs to protect itself. It needs to know what it's getting and what it isn't getting, where responsibilities are allocated and where liabilities end. Okay. You need an agreement. So if an MSP came to me with a crappy little one-page agreement or something that looked like a boilerplate that, still has insert state here under jurisdiction, they're out the door. They're out the door. Third bit of advice, if I were a company looking for an MSP, I would want to make sure that there is I'm not going to say cultural fit, because cultural fit is all well and good, that there is a personality fit. Okay, that there is. It's like having, you're sort of married to this company. They're going to be working on your systems, giving you advice. You have to be able to respect the other person. You want to make sure that you're going to get along with them. If you sort of say, "Well, I like him. He's crazy," right? This MSP I'm dealing with, they're crazy. When he calls me, I don't even want to answer the phone because he's always telling me there's something wrong. That's not a good fit. So just because you have a good contract and just because the MSP understands your business doesn't mean it's a good fit for you. You have to like the MSP. They have to get along with you. You have to, because you're going to be dealing with them very often. So those are my three bits of advice. How about you?
I think you did good. I
Good?
a couple
Just
of
good? Good is like a C. You know that? Good is like a C. Yeah.
You get an attaboy.
No, that's fair enough.
You got 3 points on each side.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Not bad.
The couple of things I would add to that is, one, when we talk about structure, especially when people are starting out, they think that structure is, like you said, these huge, tall. No, it's the beginnings. it needs to be so that it's going to always be stronger. It's always going to be better structured, but it doesn't have to be done to the same level as a $5 million similar company. And you have to recognize that is part of the cost of doing business. There was CompTIA did their annual review of the state of the MSP world economy or whatever, and they did their presentation, and they said, I think it was 38% of MSPs regarded themselves as fully knowledgeable business owners in terms of running a business.
I would like 2 minutes of rebuttal on that.
Exactly. And it was one of those, because I did a podcast with them where we talked about it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And nothing will be further from the truth if we were talking about a lawn maintenance company, if we were talking about somebody who was starting an insurance brokerage, if someone was speaking legal. We start by being the technologists, and then we'll work in terms of being the business owner. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is that when we talk about willing to understand, that can include willing to learn. If they don't necessarily understand your business, but they're asking questions about your business, they're actually interested, and not just, so tell me about your company. Oh, will they never shut up? And that they're looking to find, because at the end of the day, you want IT. If you're the CEO of a potential client, you want IT to help your organization grow. And the only way that's going to happen is if the IT support understands what your company does.
So you're right. Either they have the knowledge or they're asking really relevant, pertinent questions and are interested in the answers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think also the fact that both parties have to recognize that both parties need to come away saying this is a valuable relationship. The client has to walk away going, my company is more secure and more productive because of the relationship with the MSP. And the MSP has to walk away going, I'm making a profit, and it's a decent profit out of the relationship. And they both have to see value.
Yeah.
And both parties have to be willing to help the other one achieve those values.
So, yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we're both in agreement on this?
We're both in agreement, which is weird that we're both in agreement, because usually I disagree with you and you're wrong. So
yeah,
this is good. Yeah, this is progress.
Oh man, right? That's progress?
I hope it's progress. It's my version of progress.
Okay, so
I have very low standards for what progress is. So.
Absolutely. It involves half of a brontosaurus.
I'm telling you, this is in the mail to you later today. So. I'm willing to draw this for anybody who sends me a request. Brontosaurus.
We'll do half dinosaur drawings at children's parties.
It'll be fun.
All right. So if somebody wants to talk with you, learn more about this, actually check out your services for reasons I don't know. Actually, for all transparency, Brad is Simplex-IT's lawyer. And he's done a great job helping me.
Proud to be.
Includes with us doing all of the co-managed stuff. So he gets it.
Yep.
Anyway, someone wants to reach out.
If they want to reach me, they can email brad@bradleygross.com, go to the website, bradleygross.com, or they could go to my own podcast, technologybradcast.com, and learn more about this stuff. What's that?
I've never been on that podcast. Now that I think of it.
Well, we've banned your IP, so
yes,
you're gonna have to go through a VPN. It's going to be difficult, but everyone else can go there and hear all about MSP business advice, legal advice, and so on.
Yep. All right. Cool.
All right.
And you also go to a fair number of the trade shows.
I do. I'll be at the PAX 8 coming up. I'll be. There are a whole lot of them, and usually I'm there in the audience or speaking. So if you reach out to me or check out the blog and so on, I announce where I'm going to be, and we'll sit down and talk.
Cool. All right. Well, as always, dude, I appreciate. Most kidding aside, these are always great conversations, whether we're at the conferences or we do this sort of thing, because it's one of those where I'm sick to death of the traditional conversations where we're just going to push whatever the agenda is of the industry or the players or whatever.
Right. I agree. Always good chatting with you. I've always said you're one of the smartest guys in the industry. So, I think that people would be well advised to listen to what you have to say on the industry stuff. In personal life and so on, you're a disaster. But in professional life, what I'm saying is they should listen to you. Yeah.
Yes. Not necessarily whether it's preventative, don't do that, or do that.
Right. Right. 100%.
And with that, this is another episode of BizTech Twists, and thanks to everybody. And remember that I believe it is a legal requirement now that you have to like and share and subscribe to these things. It got passed recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have another diagram about that. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a triceratops at this case.
I don't know how to. Hold on, wait a minute.
But you're only doing the back half of it. So.
I don't even know how to draw a wing. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. Yeah. All right.
In any case, catch you all later. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.